You sent your word and you healed my disease. You are the Lord, my need. Me not hear nothing out of this. Oh, come on. One side. Whether therefore ye eat or drink or whatsoever ye do, do all to the glory of God. Good evening and welcome to another edition of Nature's Way here on Waves 96.3 FM. I am Debbie, your host, and I am happy to be here with you this evening. A wonderful Sunday evening. And I just want to say God has been gracious unto us, and we are grateful for His guidance, His protection, and His provision, and the fact that He has spared our lives so that we can be here this evening. You know, as we continue our discussion this afternoon on hydrotherapy, the wonders of water, and the healing that water brings as one of our 8 laws of health. I invite you to bow your heads with me while I pray. Our Father, which art in heaven, we are grateful for your mercies towards us. We are grateful, Lord, for all that you have done on our behalf. We are grateful for spared lives. We are grateful for health. We are grateful for strength. We are grateful for your provision. We are grateful, Lord, that you have allowed us this privilege to be co laborers with you. And we pray that you may strengthen us, give us wisdom and understanding as we impart these information that we have learned of to your people. Bless your people, your listeners, and your viewers now. Touch them, heal them. And I pray, dear God, that we'll be all closer drawn to you and that we will prepare our hearts to go home with you and reign with you through the ceaseless ages of eternity. Be with us now as I say thanks in your name. Amen. Amen. So, yes, we are live and well, and everything seemed to be okay in studio. And I trust that our listeners and our viewers are hearing us loud and clear. Those are on the radio, those on YouTube. I hope that the information that will be disseminated here this afternoon will be useful, and that you will be able to use the information, because these are practical things. And as we have said last week, that the Bible often uses water as a powerful symbol. And as we know that water is one of the 8 laws of health, drinking plenty of water is essential to our well-being, to our system, this beautiful system that God has made. And it is useful not just for internal um, healthfulness, but also external healthfulness. So as we use the water internally, we are also to use it externally, and it is good. The Bible uses water as a powerful symbol, and it cleanses, it purifies. It also has a spiritual connotation. It also God provided water for us to use, right? Water also creates and rejuvenates life, it strengthens, and it also symbolizes it in the Bible as destruction and judgment, as we have mentioned before in the passages as we spoke about the great flood and all of that. All right, so God has used water to heal, to give life, to make provisions for us as well. Water can make us healthy, it can strengthen us, it gives us the ability to grow from strength to strength. It also imparts wisdom and knowledge. Also, it, it is also likened unto the Holy Spirit, which is the Word of God, and the Word of God, I should say, as it relates to the flowing of the living water. And Christ Himself has been, represented as living water. And what other water do we need? All right, so God has really granted us the privilege to be here this afternoon to share, to continue to share with you on this wonderful topic of um, hydrotherapy. And as I go along, you're going to be hearing some terms and you're going to be hearing some things repeated because things that we have spoken about before, especially as it relates to um, the blood and flowing of water and all of that. So, we are going to be looking at some basic objectives of water. And as our topic says, it's hydrotherapy. We're going to be looking at some basic objectives, how we use water as it relates to local cold applications. All right. So I hope that as I go along, you'll get the understanding of what I'm talking about. And these information is basic knowledge. So these have to be, why I said that, because this has to be the springboard from which we operate. So it is important that we know we have the basic information so that we can use these information when we are doing our applications. Because even from childhood and years gone by, we know that water um, therapy has been used for healing, for home remedies. All right. A lot of time, a lot of persons, and if you ask maybe your great grandmother or so, if how did they deal with illnesses and so on, they'll tell you we use water, either hot or cold, and both, to heal us or parents when they are sick. So water therapy, and now the new name in our time is hydrotherapy. So it has been used and it is still being used and it has proven to be effective. All right. So before we go into individual water therapy applications, now we need to understand some objectives, and we have about 21 of them. It's not exhausted. Oh, I'm just going to share a few with you. All right. So this knowledge, as I said, will better help us to use the hydrotherapy in our own home. So we will know how to apply, when to apply, and which ones to apply, either hot or cold or room temperature. All right. So water therapies, we're going to be looking at the water therapies that do varying things, that you use for varying things. For example, water therapies which increase both heat production and heat elimination. All right. And as I go along, what I'm going to do, I'm going to be naming these, the kind of therapies. Hot or cold, for example, graduated bath. Now, these are primarily composed of tonic and fever reducing applications. So, most of these applications are for persons who are having fever, very high fever, and also pain. All right. And we know that once you have pain, it means that there is inflammation present. And so you will have to ensure that you see the difference, know the difference. So you treat for fever and you treat for inflammation, pain, right? So I'm going to just be naming these types. Now, the water therapies, which increase both heat production and heat elimination. And I'm going to try to go a little slowly so that our listeners and viewers can hear and understand, because it is a lot to grasp, but it's just to get the basic knowledge so that you can use this information in time to come. And listeners, viewers, I just want to say before I get into it that there is going to come a time that we will not be able to go to the doctor. We will not be able to use those facilities because persons are going to be getting so sick, and it's going to be a lot of times we hear persons complain about the amount of persons in these health facilities when you go there, and it takes a whole day into the night for you to be seen or administered to. And so in order for you to be well and to get well, you will have to do some home remedies. And hydrotherapy or water remedy is the best remedy for almost all our ailments. Now, why I said that? Because it has to work in conjunction with our diet, with our lifestyle, and all of that. So we have to be willing to change our lifestyles and to change our diets, all right, so that God can reach us and can heal us and stop building up that barrier to prevent us from getting well. All right, so water therapies, which increase both heat production and heat elimination, and they are, as I said, primarily composed of tonic and fever reducing applications. All right, so these applications that I'm going to be listing, they are arranged in order from the most to the least powerful. All right, so as I name them, you know the most powerful is graduated bath. Then you have cooling wet sheet pack. Then you have cold friction, prolonged tepid full bath at 88 degrees Fahrenheit, cold full bath followed by a short hot full bath, pale pour or sprinkling, which is shower. You pour the water on from a pail, or you take a shower. That is called sprinkling in the term as the terminology. Tepid pale pour, cold pale pour, cold compress, graduated compress, evaporating sheet, cold to head and neck. So you would make the application. So you would have a towel and you will put it in cold, icy cold water, and you will just wring it enough to prevent the dripping, and then you would apply it to the head or at the back of the neck. Welcome, Sanika. Happy to have you on. So you can have the cold to head and neck application, cold to spine application, cold to abdomen, cold over the heart, cold colonic. So you would put it in that area where your colon is. Tepid or cold enema, cold water drinking, a measure that this now should be combined with all the others that I have named before. All right, so you would do that as well. So, especially, and as I said, this application is composed of tonic and fever reducing applications. All right, so that's it for the therapies, which increase both heat production and heat elimination. All right, so water therapies, which increase the elimination of heat. These are the best methods to use when a fever is present and the cold bath should be avoided. All right, so these that I'm going to be naming are the best methods to use when a fever is present and the cold bath should be avoided. So This list is also arranged in the from the most to the least powerful, as before. Hot bath for 2 to 3 minutes, followed by a cold bath with friction for 1 minute. Hot blanket pack, hot evaporating sheet, hot sponge bath, fomentation to the back, fomentation to the abdomen, followed by the cold enema, fomentation to the back, followed by a cold wet sheet pack, hot blanket pack, followed by graduated bath, hot blanket pack, followed by also by a graduated bath, and you can also do the hot blanket pack, also followed by a prolonged tepid bath. Hot blanket pack followed by cold friction. All right, so please repeat the cold, the cold. Okay, so the water therapy, which eliminates heat and heat elimination. That was the first one. That was I'm not sure which one I'm supposed to repeat. Because the first one, water therapies which increase heat production and heat elimination. And this one that I'm listing now is water therapies which increase the elimination of heat. All right. So, and they are, I'm going to go over them. It says hot bath for 2 to 3 minutes, followed by a cold bath with friction for 1 minute. Okay. All right. So, water therapy, water therapies which increase both heat production and heat elimination. And I'm going to be listing them again. Graduated bath, cooling wet sheet pack, cold friction bath, prolonged tepid full bath at 88 degrees Fahrenheit, cold full bath followed by a short hot full bath, pail pour or sprinkling. So you either pour the water from a pail or you do sprinkling, which is taking a shower. Tepid pail pour, cold pail pour, or you can do a cold compress, graduated compress, evaporating sheet, cold to head and neck, cold to spine, cold to abdomen, cold over the heart, cold colonic, and you put it, this means you put the application over the heart at the where your heart is, so you will have that cold towel over your heart or over your colon area. So that's cold colonic, tepid or cold enema, cold water drinking, and this cold water drinking should be combined with all of those that I have mentioned before. All right, okay. So we're going to be looking at cold therapies which increase elimination of heat. Now these are the best methods to use when a fever is present and the cold bath should be avoided. All right. Now this one is also arranged from the most to the least powerful. Hot bath for 2 to 3 minutes, followed by a cold bath with friction for 1 minute. So the hot bath for 2 to 3 minutes and the cold bath, which would follow, you do that for you do that with friction. So it means that you're going to be rubbing the area, rubbing the body for 1 minute. Hot blanket pack, hot evaporating sheet, hot sponge bath, fomentation to the back, fomentation to the abdomen, followed by a cold enema. Fomentation to the back, followed by a cold, wet sheet pack, hot blanket pack, followed by graduated bath. Hot blanket pack, followed by prolonged tepid bath. Hot blanket pack, followed by cold friction. Dry friction, which means you're going to be rubbing the skin as well with a dry cloth to create that friction, and it's called a cold friction. You are welcome, Newbert. All right, so these are two of the basic objectives that we use in water therapy when we are trying to get rid of a fever, and when we are, trying to get the fever down, and when we want the person to be stable and well. All right. So the other application that we're going to be looking on is water therapy, which encourage the destruction of toxins. So you can use the water also to get rid of toxins in your body. Now, these are procedures which encourage vital resistance to disease, while at the same time encourage the destruction of toxins by stimulating the toxin destroying destruction of toxins by stimulating the toxin destroying cells of the thyroid, the liver, the spleen, the lymphatics, and other tissues. All right, so these they will encourage the resistance of disease, and they will encourage the stimulating the the stimulating toxin destroying cells to be multiplied. Now, this listing that I'm going to be giving you is short, and it is not um, it is not listed from greater to the least powerful. All right, so this is just the list that I'm going to give you. The two I gave you before, they were listed from the most powerful to the least powerful, and it depends on the situation. All right, okay. So water therapies which encourage the elimination of toxins. All right, so I'm going to be um, listing these, and they are not a lot. Radiant heat bath, sweating wet sheet pack, steam bath, and the elimination of producing sweat and washing it away is very important. So these are the therapies that you are going to be using that will help to eliminate toxins. And I'm going to say them again. Radiant heat. So it is the radiant heat bath, sweating wet sheet pack, and of course, a steam bath, which most persons use. You go into that area and you get the steam to eliminate toxins and so on. Some persons do it with their feet, some persons do it full bodied. All right, so a steam bath, and that one is most popular. But this method, or these remedies are very um, important, because they help to produce sweat, and with the sweat now washes away the toxins, and this is very important. All right, so that is another hydrotherapy water therapy method that you can use to encourage the elimination of toxins. Now, water therapies which greatly increase um, leukocytic action. Now, leukocytes we looked at earlier when we were starting this topic. It is the WBCs, the white blood cells, and these, as we know, are essential components of the immune system, that these play a crucial role in protecting the body from infections and foreign invaders. So, this now, you know that this will help to increase white blood cells formation. All right. So, and as we know, they they are these WBCs are our body's primary fighters against toxins and bacterial infections. So we do a general cold bath and we do a heating compress frequently renewed. So meaning that you do the heating compress and you do it like every 2 to 3 minutes. So you do it, you renew the material that you're going to be using on the area. So if it's a towel, you don't keep it for more than 5 minutes and you keep renewing it. All right. And you can also do an alternate heating compress for this therapy, which increase the leukocytic action, which means that it increases the white blood cells formation. And you want this because these white blood cells are your body's army or your defense force that fights against those foreign invaders and those toxins and diseases that want to enter your bodies. All right. Now, water therapies, which greatly encourage elimination of bacteria by the skin and the kidneys. So, one that you're going to do especially is the steam bath. Now, this is most effective. So, sweating wet sheet pack is also effective. Prolonged neutral bath. This is also good. Sweating baths. Copious water drinking. Now, each of these should be followed by a cold mitten friction, cold towel rub, or some other cold procedure, no heat. All right. Aside from your steam bath, you're going to be doing a cold friction. You are going to, when you take your steam bath and the sweating wet sheet pack, you are going to have a prolonged neutral bath, meaning that the water is not going to be hot or cold, room temperature. And this is good. Sweating baths, and then you're going to drink a lot of water, copious water drinking. All right. And you are going to do that after you have done all of these, because it means that your body would now need that lubrication because you sweat out all of that water. All right. So you're going to need to do that, and also some other cold procedure to help to close up your pores, so that, as we said last week, you won't get a draft or a fresh cold, right? If you have a cold already, or it will prevent you from getting a cold or getting sick. So the water therapies, which greatly encourage elimination of bacteria by the skin and kidneys: steam bath, sweating, wet sheet pack, followed by a prolonged neutral bath, sweating baths, copious water drinking, and make sure that you do this when you have done the rest, because it is very important. Water therapies which increase oxidation. Now, cold baths increase the absorption of oxygen, the elimination of carbon dioxide, and the oxidation of fat and carbohydrates. So, cold baths are what is recommended for therapies which increase oxidation. All right. All cold application will tend to do this, by the way. But some of the best are prolonged cold baths, such as dripping sheet rub, rubbing shallow bath, sorry, that rubbing shallow bath, cold full bath, and plunge. Plunge here now means that you are going to do a quick dip into a bathtub of cold water. So you're going to do a quick dip in and then you come out. All right. So that is called a plunge. So that is another method, another water therapy that you can use to increase oxidation. Also, a cooling wet sheet pack can be used as well. All right. Water therapies, which are the most efficient means of stimulating nitrogen. Hot applications are what are needed for this. And, the top recommendations are hot full bath, heating wet sheet pack, and dry pack. Also, a steam bath, hot air, sun bath, and radiant heat bath. So these are the applications that are good for stimulating nitrogen oxidation. Water therapies which excite the central nerve ganglia. Now, the, these are especially helpful in dynamic fevers. Now, many neurasthenic conditions, and neurasthenic means this is characterized by persistent fatigue and exhaustion, and your whole nervous system is weak. So when you have these conditions, these are the baths that you are to take, and I'm going to the applications that you are to make, and I'm going to be listing them shortly. So, first, let me just define the conditions for you. So, as I said, neurasthenic condition has to deal with persistent fatigue, exhaustion, and a whole nervous system weakness. All right. The other one is hypopepsia. Hypopepsia is a deficiency in pepsin, which is an enzyme that is crucial for digestion, and it's particularly in the stomach area. All right, so that is another condition. When you treat with such condition, you have to take the therapies which excite the central nervous ganglia. Kidney insufficiency and various visceral conditions. Now, visceral conditions refers to a state or an issue that is affecting the internal organs or the viscera of the body, such as the stomach, the intestine, the liver, or the heart. This condition can manifest as a pain or disease or dysfunction within the organs that I mentioned, which is your intestine, your stomach, your liver, or your heart. All right. So when you treat with these conditions, you are to make sure that these water therapy applications are used, because these will excite the central nerve ganglia and will allow you to be better. All right. So the you have to do a um, you have to do a very cold, very hot, and very cold alternate. So what you're going to do is you're going to you will have to gradually work up to very hot. So when you put on the water to get hot, you can do alternate things in between. So because at one point you're going to need the water to be very hot, and at another point you're going to need it to be very cold. Now, in between that time, what you can do spinal sponging, and you can also alternate spinal compresses. All right. You can also, in between, alternate full bath. So you can do a full bath cold and a full bath hot, followed by various forms of cold. And remember now, you want to close back your pores. So when you do the hot, it is advised that you do the hot first and then you do the cold. So you are going to do very hot, hot enough that your body you can tolerate, and cold enough that you can tolerate as well. All right, and you can do this sponging in between and the compresses in between. All right, so and you're going to do alternate like localized compresses. Localized compresses. If you have a problem in your stomach area, where this, remember now you want to, it's a deficiency that you have that will cause your digestion to, you won't be able to digest your food so readily. So if you have that condition, you are going to put the application in that area. You can also put it in on your spinal area to help for the flow, and because this helps the central nervous system to be excited and produce those enzymes, crucial enzymes that you need for digestion. Water therapies, which encourage metabolic processes. So, in most forms of chronic disease, there is a grave disturbance of the general nutrition arising from failure of the tissues to maintain normal metabolism. So the most permanent effects toward improving the metabolism, either locally or generally, come from somewhat prolonged hot applications, followed by a brief cold application. All right. So what you're going to do is you are going to apply to the skin area, affecting the that area that is affecting the body part that is being affected. All right, so you put it on that. If it's your stomach, you're going to apply it to your stomach, which, and then you're going to do the cold. You're going to do prolonged hot application, followed by a brief cold application. All right, so you're going to alternate hot and cold, and then you're going to do also, you can do a heating compress in this case. Okay, water therapies which increase blood formation. Now, general cold applications, whether mild or more severe, are the best hydriatic means of promoting the processes of blood fermentation. The metabolic applications that I have just listed above also increase blood formation and glandular activity, but the these are especially helpful for anemia. So short general cold baths are the best. So in order for you to increase blood fermentation or formation, you have to take cold baths. So you take a cold shower. All right. The lower the temperature is the better, but the application must be very short. So you don't take a very long shower. The cold mitten friction and the cold towel rub also can be applied, and you apply this 2 to 3 times daily. And this is valuable for that purpose in order for the blood fermentation or formation. So you apply general cold applications. So those cold applications that I have mentioned before, you can apply. But what works best most of the times is the cold. You take a cold full shower, but it's not a long shower. All right. Water therapies which increase, oh, before I go on, why it is not a long shower or it is not too cold, because you don't want the blood to rush too fast to your head, because this can cause problems. This can cause you to even get a stroke. So you have to be careful. The shower has to be cold but not icy cold. So that is why it is a shower and not like a plunge. All right. So you take a shower so that it gradually um, allows the blood to flow. When you do a plunge, the blood just rushes to your head, and this can be fatal. All right. So make sure that this is why it is important, listeners, viewers, that you know the basic objectives. You want to reduce a fever. You want to increase your blood formation. You want to increase your oxidation. So you have to know what are the basic applications. Because when you apply these therapies, it has to meet the objective that you want. All right. So it is important. It may be a bit not so clear at first, but then if you do your research and listen to it over and over, you will get the basic understanding. Because if you make an application where you want to do blood formation, and you use an application which increase the leukocytic action, then the application is incorrect and you are not going to get the desired results based on the condition. Because remember now, for the leukocytic condition, this is when the person is suffering from fatigue and nervous system weakness, right? You want to strengthen the nervous system, right? You are not going to do an application for blood formation in that case. You are going to use the application that will help to increase the white blood cell formation. So this is why it is important. This is why we have to spend the time to learn and understand. Because when you're doing hydrotherapy, you don't just apply hot and cold water willy-nilly. You have to know why you're applying it. So it is important to know what condition the person has to do the correct application. All right. So this is why we have to spend the time to get the basics out of the way so that you can do the actual application, so that you can get your family member or your friend or whoever well. All right. Of course, by the help of God. So, water therapies, which increase general blood movement and local blood supply. So, the ability to move fresh, vitalized blood into and out of key areas is very important in providing nutrition and oxygen, carrying away wastes and toxins, and in fighting disease. Now, some of the suggestions include cold applications to the surface of the body. So, cold applications to the surface of the body will excite the heart. This will increase the blood pressure and increase blood and lymph movement throughout the body. All, and remember, as I told you at the beginning, these are mostly tonic applications, and these are for rejuvenation and also to reduce fever. All right. So all tonic measures may be used for this purpose. The cold compress over the heart area can also be used in many cases. When general cold applications, when you have to rule out cold applications, as I mentioned earlier, there was a situation where we have to rule out the cold application completely, so you can just the cold bath, so you can use the cold on the heart. All right, this can help. So in cases of fever, heart or kidney disease, in neurasthenia, that word is getting to me, with general feebleness, and in chronic tuberculosis and other wasting diseases, the cold mitten friction and the cold towel rub are especially useful in reinforcing the energy of the heart and strengthening the circulation. All right, and I'm going to do that again for you slowly. So, cold applications to the surface of the body excite the heart, increase blood pressure, and increase blood and lymph movement throughout the body. All tonic measures may be used for this purpose to get the blood flowing, blood movement, and local blood supply increase. The cold compress over the heart, that area, can be used in many cases when general cold applications are ruled out. In cases of fever, heart, or kidney disease, in neurasthenia, with general feebleness, and in chronic tuberculosis with general feebleness, right? And in chronic tuberculosis and other wasting diseases, the cold mitten friction and the cold towel rub are especially useful in reinforcing the energy of the heart and strengthening the circulation. General hot applications are not helpful here, so we don't want to use that. All right, and my producer is sharing with us hydrotherapy is very good for all and works excellently on children below 12 years of age and above 5 years of age. Yes, it helps your body to consistently produce white blood cells. That is true, especially in the case of a fever. Yes. Thank you for that, producer, for reinforcing that. Thank you for reinforcing that. Thank you very much. Now, general hot applications, as I said, are not useful in this case in order to help to increase blood movement and local blood supply. They ultimately lower the blood pressure, diminish heart energy, and lessen the blood flow. So you need to avoid the hot applications altogether in this case. If a hot application must be made, however, guard against the heart failure by applying a cold compress to the heart area while the hot application is being given. All right? So remember now the blood flows from the heart to all over, and then you don't want there's no blood in the heart in this case. So what you want to do is when you're doing, if you have to apply heat, make sure the heart area you apply some cold to the heart area, like a cold compress, while you're doing the hot. And you are not going to apply the heat for very long. All right. So this especially applies to steam baths and hot full baths. So if you have to do that, make sure you have something cold in that area. Water therapies which increase heat production. Now, it is the impression of cold on the thermic nerves of the skin that best increases heat production. So The more intense or sometimes prolonged this impression, the greater the desired effect. So the most intense effects are produced by prolonging the application until the temperature of the body has been slightly lowered. But if the cold is greatly prolonged or is repeated at short intervals, the heat rise affects the heat rise effect, will fail. All right. So you want to make sure that the prolonged application, you do this until the temperature of the body, in case of a fever, has been slightly lowered. All right. If the cold is too prolonged or is repeated at short intervals, so you have to do it in good time. So the heat rise effect will fail. So then you will have the fever going down in that case. Water therapies which increase the elimination of heat. And I just did the production of heat. So we are going to increase the elimination of heat now. Nearly all types of fever cases need an increase of heat elimination. Elevation of temperature in fever is due less to increased heat production than to decreased heat elimination. So, vigorous rubbing in a cold, full, or shallow bath is recommended, or a wet sheet rub, a wet sheet pack, very short hot applications followed by short cold to the surface, cold friction bath, cold towel bath rub, cold water drinking, and you do this after you have done the others, cold enema, cold applications to the spine. In certain cases, you can use the hot blanket pack, evaporating wet sheet pack, and similar measures may also be used in this case. All right. Water therapies which relieve pain and nervous irritability. Now, hydrotherapy applications can greatly help in this area. The general neutral bath is very effective in relieving nervous irritability, inducing sleep, in insomnia, um, delirium, and even acute fevers. Moist abdominal bandage can also be used. Cool head cap, heating spinal um, compress in certain cases can also be used. For relieving localized pain and irritability, the hot fomentation and the heating compress are both good for that. The cold compress and ice compress are both valuable in these instances in which the pain is in a superficial, mean near surface area parts, and the applications can be made directly to the area of the pain. So you can use that application, the cold compress and the ice compress, when the pain is near surface. If the pain is deep, so you do for relieving the localized pain and irritability, the hot fomentation and the heating compress are good for that. The pain is much deeper than surface, you can use that application. Water therapies which combat bacterial development. Now, this is done by increasing blood movement through the infected parts while at the same time increasing the white blood cell activity. Now, prolonged applications of cold, when it can be applied directly to the parts involved, can be used. For deeper areas of infection, it is best to increase blood alkalinity by means of general cold applications and by measures of increasing local leukocytic action, such as the frequently renewed heating compress and the alternate compress. All right? Water therapies which control blood movement and volume. The slowing of blood and lymph encourages morbid processes as waste and toxic materials accumulate in the tissues. Apply to inflamed or congested parts. The measures that I have mentioned before as it relates to your blood movement, and I'm going to remind you of them shortly. And this will encourage leukocytic or the white blood cells activity. Also helpful derivative measures such as hot leg and foot pack, hot foot bath, etc. Then you are going to use a cold compress over the affected part, which revulsive measures of all sorts. So you're going to use for the blood movement. Remember, now you want a blood movement, you are going to use the cold applications to the surface of the body, which will excite the heart, and this will increase the blood pressure and increase blood and lymph movement throughout the body. So this is what you're going to use to control blood movement and volume, the cold applications that we mentioned earlier. All right, so you can also use the cold compress over the heart, and it can be used in many cases as well. All right, but general cold applications can be used to help to control the blood movement and the volume. Water therapies which lessen heat production. Heat production must be discouraged in fever cases. So when you have a fever, especially a chronic fever, crucial fever, you don't want to apply the heat applications. So you don't want any application that will produce heat. All right, it is best inhibited by short hot applications to the surface and by prolonged or frequently repeated cold applications. So if you have to apply the hot applications, you don't do it um, you don't do it for long, all right? But you do the prolonged cold applications. This will help to reduce the heat. The best heat application for this purpose would be the short, hot full bath, very short. You can use a hot blanket pack as well. Fomentations to the spine, hot evaporating sheet, and then the best cold applications would be graduated bath and a prolonged tepid cold bath, and cooling wet sheet pack, because you want to apply more cold than hot, I should say. Water therapies which lessen heat elimination. Now we just look at water therapies which lessen heat production. Now we are looking at water therapies which lessen heat elimination. All right. Now it is seldom necessary to discourage the elimination of heat by the body, but fainting is an exception. So these will help to prevent excessive heat loss. You use a dry pack or a hot blanket pack, a hot enema, hot water drinking, and it's you don't drink it as hot where you have to cool it. You drink it at warm enough that you can just sip it. Avoid exposing the person to cold while changing the applications. So the room, the area where you are applying, making the application should be closed, and no air coming in, no windows open or doors to get in the cold air. So remember, when you're moving the hot, you don't want the person to get cold. So it is wise that you make sure the place is well closed and no cold air coming in, right? So if you when you are doing the alternate, the hot application by the short cold application, right, such as any vigorous cold wet hand rubbing and the cold mitten friction. So you don't want these to shock the person's system. So you don't want to do that. All right. So make sure that your hand is dry. You don't want to do the wet hand rubbing, the cold, too cold and vigorous. So when you do it, that will cause problems, and you don't want to use the cold mitten friction as well. Water therapies which diminish general metabolic activity. So, above all, maintain absolute rest in bed. That is the best. Also, good is the neutral bath. So, you take a neutral bath and make sure you get rest in bed. So, diminishing activity of an overexcited gland, such as in hypopepsia, which is the inadequate stomach HCI. Your stomach is not producing that enzyme that helps with digestion, all right, or catarrh, or the intestines, or the uterus. Now, this may be lessened by various derivative measures, such as leg and foot baths, those kind of baths that will help to, keep you, make you calm, and so that you can get some rest. And this will draw blood away from the area. So it will eliminate pain and so on, and heat. Water therapies which control bleeding. Now, this one is interesting. So, hemostatic or stopping of the bleeding effects may be obtained either directly by application to the bleeding area or indirectly through applications to a reflex area. To obtain direct effects, either very hot, which would be 110 degrees to 115 degrees Fahrenheit, or the extreme, very cold, which would be 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. These applications must be used. So it's either very hot or either very cold. The most valuable hot applications is the hot compress though. A jet of hot vapor has also been used successfully. It is now 2 minutes after 5 o'clock and time is going. We are here on Nature's Way. Thank you for joining. Those who have joined, I hope that the information is useful so far. It may not be um, so useful to you immediately, but the information is good to know that in the event that you have to make any of these applications, doing any form of hydrotherapy or water remedies, no, or therapies, water therapies, you can, have this information in order to help you to make the correct application. So, as I was saying, a jet of hot vapor has also been used successfully. Now, the hot nasal spray and sponging of the face with very hot water for nosebleed, hot vaginal douche or um, menorrhagia, menorrhagia, yes, can also be used. Hot urine irrigation in metrorrhagia and postpartum hemorrhage. These can be used. The most convenient cold applications, no, that's for the hot application. So if you have a nosebleed and if you are bleeding from the vaginal area, these are the two applications. Let me say them again. For a nosebleed, you do a hot nasal spray and sponging of the face with very hot water. And this you apply for a nosebleed. For vaginal bleeding, you can do a hot vaginal douche. All right. The most convenient cold applications are ice and ice compresses. These should be applied directly to the bleeding area or as a proximal compress. So, proximal meaning you put it as close as possible to the area. Across the trunk of a main artery supplying the bleeding part. So that's the area that you can apply this compress, compress. An example of this would be an ice collar, or they call it an ice gravat, and you can use this for nosebleed. Here, there are some applications that you can make, like the cold applications to the upper spine is a most excellent measure of checking nosebleed. Now, placing the hands in ice water while applying ice to the base of the cranium, which is the lower back of the head, and to upper part of the spine. You do that while you're so what you're going to do, you're going to place your hand in ice water, the person's hand in ice water, while applying the base of the cranium, which is the lower back of the head, and the upper part of the spine. So you're going to do the applications there in order to check the nosebleed. Placing the feet in cold water will also stop nosebleed. Now, for hemorrhage of the lungs, place cold compresses over the chest and very hot fomentations between the shoulders and over back of the neck and the upper spine. Ice applied to the nostrils will also contract the blood vessels in the lungs. For stomach hemorrhage, swallow lumps of ice and place ice compresses over the reflex area that affects the stomach. Um, in apoplexy, the ice cap and ice cold compresses to the head, face, and neck are also very helpful. So these you have to make sure that you know what you're doing, because this can be life-threatening. So you have to ensure that you have the basic information, right? So the basic information that I have shared here are good for you to know so that you can know when to apply what therapy. All right. So um continuing, we're going to be looking at some of the applications. So we are going to be looking at the cloth and blanket applications. And it would have been good if we could show you some of these things, but you can do the research and you can see how these things are applied. All right, because when you read and when you hear how what to apply and when you see how it is done, will be much better for you. All right, so cloth and blanket applications. Now, last week we learned the great importance of the blood and of the careful use of water in aiding the blood to bring both restoration and increase physical capacity. And we learned many basic facts about how to apply neutral, hot, and cold to water to the human body. So we looked at all of that last week into this week because we just looked at, you know, all of that. So this week we are going to be looking at different water therapy applications. And we just looked at, I just um, told you of some of the basic applications. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to tell you how they are done. So the local code is what we're going to be focusing on. So the local code application. So what they are, what it is, the cold compresses, what it is, how it can help, and how to apply it will will done. So hydrotherapy can be used to cure any type of illnesses, yes, and it is now obvious. Yes, of course. Thank you. Psalm 23, He restoreth my soul. He leads me beside the still waters. Thank you. Right. So we are leading you to the use of water to water therapy for health. And this is why we are here to help you along this healthful, wholesome living so that you can, be healthy, stay healthy, become healthy, and share with others how to become and stay healthy. So we are going to be looking at the cold therapy now. All right. So just a little history here. Um, they, in centuries past, we call these we called home remedies or water treatments. Now became known in the early and mid 19th century as water cure. And you have doctors like Doctors Thatcher Troll and James Jackson. They helped thousands in their water cure institutes. Now, by the beginning of the 20th century, it gained the title of hydrotherapy and hydriatics. And for several decades now, it has been called physical therapy or physiotherapy. And, these are just some of the medical terms that they use in the medical world. Now, what we will do, we can use the humble title of water therapy or hydrotherapy in our here now in our days. All right, so it is still the most wonderful blessing of God and that God has given to mankind. And as one of the eight laws of health, water is one of the blessings that God has given to us. And we not only drink the water, we use it both internally and externally. And we are now seeing how important it is in our lives because it rejuvenates, it heals, it re energizes, and God has provided in abundance for us in every way, shape, and form. We can get the water to drink. Persons can go for days and weeks without food, but if you are weak and weary and even hungry, a little water can do your body and your soul great. So, God has given us this wonderful, wonderful method. He has made this provision for us to use, not only for internal use, but also for external use. Now, local cold. Now, what is local cold? Now, these are localized applications of cold water, which means that they are applied only to smaller parts of the body. So this hence the term local. Now, these cold applications can also be used as a proximal complex. All right, and these can be used to reduce blood flow to a limb. So, cold compress. A cold compress is a local application of cold given by means of a cloth wrung out of cold water. Either hand towels or cotton cloths can be used for this. Now, how it can help you? How can a cold compress help you? The cold compress is very helpful in cases of fever, pain due to edema, or trauma, such as sprains and so on. And they are used for congestion in the sinuses and for congestive headaches, for both, you know, you can use a cold compress along with a hot foot bath. In addition, they are helpful for tachycardia, meaning heartbeats over 100 per minute. So cold compresses are very useful. Now, how do we apply cold compresses? So you can use a towel to protect the bedding. First, if you are going to, if the person has to be on the bed, you can use, they call them Turkish towels because they are very absorbent. You can put these to protect the bed as well as the person's clothing from becoming wet. Now you're going to fold the towels or cloth to a desired size. Then you're going to dip a towel into cold water, and then you're going to wring it out, but you're going to wring it out just enough to prevent the dripping. All right. Or you can use that towel application, or you can take the wet cloths. For example, if you have a block of ice, you can use the put the wet cloth on the block of ice, and then you can use that to apply the cold compress. All right. In that case, though, the cold compress will be much colder because it will be coming from the ice. It's not like it's going to be wet with the ice. It's going to be just cold, like very cold. So what you're going to do is lay the towel or the rag on the afflicted part of the body. So you're going to change the compress for a fresh cold one every 1 to 5 minutes, because by the time it gets there, it's going to be getting, it's not going to be so cold. So you want to change it, and you don't want the area to get warm. So you're going to change it frequently so that it can stay cold. A set of 2 compresses will be needed, so you can do it twice, so they can be continually alternated. So you do one, you have maybe 2 towels or 2 rags, and you put one on, and then by the time you're ready to take the other one off to apply the other one will be cold enough. So this is not done, the compress will quickly warm up, and then you are going to have problem there. So the area, you're not going to get the desired result. Now, the thicker the compress, the less often it will have to be changed for a new one. So you can have a thick towel or a thick rag, or you can double the rags, maybe put 3 or 4 together, and make sure it is very cold. So the thicker it is the less time you have to change it. All right. So you're going to place the cold compress on the forehead or on the affected area, and then you're going to replace it frequently so that you can get the desired effect. Now, cold compresses can be placed on the head, it can be placed on the neck, over the heart or lungs, and to the abdomen or the spine, etc., the knees, the ankles, and so on. All right. When applied to the head, they need to be pressed down firmly, especially over the forehead and the temporal arteries. Now, these arteries are to the right and to the left of the front forehead of the forehead. So that's where you're going to place it, just above and to the front of the ears. So the compresses can be placed over the abdomen in when you have the person has thyroid fever. So you can place it at the abdomen in that case. Now, unless the application is quite thick, and always when it is left on too long, over 3 to 5 minutes, the application changes from a cold compress to a heating compress. And when you are applying a cold compress, you do not want it to turn into a heating compress, right? So you don't want it to stay on too long. So remember that you have to do the change frequently. All right, so we are doing cold, local cold. So that was it for the cold compress. Now we're going to be looking at the ice pack, right? So applying an ice pack, what an ice pack is, how it can help us, and how to apply it. So an ice pack, although it is not given that name, now this is actually an ice compress, and it will always produce a stronger cold effect than cold cloths wrung out of water. So you can use an ice pack. So, or an ice compress, they can call it. So those ice pack, you have those packages with ice, and you have some of them that are made out with hard plastic, or you have some that are made of they have cloth or something, soft plastic with ice in it, that you set in the freezer and you always have it. So if you bump your head or your foot or something, you can apply it to that area. All right. Also, so it is said it is more effective than the cold compress, because you have to the ice is actually there. But what happens is some persons are not able to tolerate the ice pack. Now, how can it help you? It can be used over the heart and chest to slow the heart. It has been used for sprains or torn ligaments, acute joint inflammation, in rheumatic fever, acute infectious arthritis, bursitis, and also burns. Now, in the hospitals, it has been used successfully to slow the heart and limit thermic reaction following surgical operations for goiter. So that's estophalmic goiter. Now you apply it, you you can pound the ice into bits and pieces, or you can use it as it is. All right, and apply it to the area. So you can either pound it up or use it in those small blocks, or you can use it, if you have them in cubes, you can just use them in cubes, or if you have a block of ice, you can chip it up and put it in a cloth and use it, put it on the area, or you can just use the ice pack. All right, whichever one. So you can place the ice on the towel or the flannel, or you can wrap it, and you can also crush it, and you put it in a or crush it and put it on the cloth or in the towel as well. All right, so what you're going to do, you make sure you protect your skin. So you have to have something in between the ice and your skin, because this can cause friction, and you don't want that to happen. All right, also, um, you can you can crush it, put it on the area. So you pack the snow, they call it snow or pound ice, because it gets white. So they call it snow ice. So you can pound it, and then you pack it until the pack is about an inch thick, and then you wrap a large flannel cloth over it and keep everything in place, and then you can probably pin it together and just keep it on the area. All right, you can wrap another flannel over it as well, over the crushed ice, and then you can use that. Now, interrupt the ice pack frequently in order to prevent freezing of the area. Rub the part with snow or with snow, yes, with the snow ice, or apply a hot fomentation over the body part to bring a local heating reaction. So that is what you're going to do. That is how you apply the ice pack. And you have to keep the area at a temperature. So that is why you bring the local heating reaction to it. All right. No, ice cravat or cravat, depending on your pronunciation. Now, what it is, it's basically the same thing as the ice pack, right? Instead of being laid around part of the body and then wrapped, this the snow or crushed ice is placed inside a towel, as I said earlier, and then wrapped around the neck or another joint area of the body. So you're going to put it in that area and then you wrap it in. Put it in the towel and you wrap it around the area. So the ice cravat is easier to work with than the ice pack. When wrapped around the neck, the ice cravat becomes an ice collar, or they call it an ice neck pack. But it can also be laid around a shoulder, an elbow, a knee, or your ankle. Now, the effect is that of a proximal application. The the carotid arteries in the neck and the vertebral arteries by the spine that go into the head, along with their small branch arteries, are all contracted. Thus, the blood supply to the brain and the head is lessened. All right, so this is when you want to lessen the blood supply to the head you want to control the volume and the movement of the blood. Okay, so it can help you by um, it is frequently used in fever, congestive headache, acute epidemic meningitis, sunstroke, and whenever prolonged sweating treatments are given as and it is eclampsia or uremia. Contraction of the blood vessels slow down the oozing of the blood into the injured tissues. Thus, edema is prevented, and it can also help to prevent black and blue swelling when tissue has been injured by sprains or contusions. In addition, it is used for rheumatoid arthritis, acute infectious arthritis, and the acute joint inflammation of rheumatic fever. So, you are going to crush ice and place it in a towel. Instead of placing the snow or crushed ice inside of a dry towel, you can wring the towel from cold water without putting the ice or snow inside it. But this will not be as cold and must be changed very frequently. So you can use the ice instead so that you don't have to change it so frequently. Fold the towel until it is about 3 inches wide and long enough to encircle the neck. Then you're going to put it in place around the neck, and then you're going to pin it and you just apply it there for a while. Now, if instead of being applied to the neck, it is to be placed on a different body joint area, and it has to be on a joint area. Now you can use a piece of flannel that is at least 12 by 12 inches for the shoulders and knees and 8 by 9 inches for the elbows and the ankles. So in order for you to get that effect, to wrap it, you use that. All right, that's the measurement that is suggested. 12 by 12 inches for the shoulders and for the knees so that it goes right around so you can pin it. And also 8 by 9 inches for the elbows and the ankles. All right, so that it stays in place for the time that you want it to work for. It is now 5:30 p.m. and yes, you are still tuned into the Nature's Way program here on Waves 96.3 FM. I hope you have been enjoying this little discourse and you have been learning and the information is useful to you. Now, we are going to be looking at the ice cap. What is the ice cap? Now, the ice cap, these are ice bags and ice caps. These can be used interchangeably. So, the ice bags come in various shapes and sizes. Now, one example is the spinal ice bag, which is about 3 inches wide by 7 to 10 inches long. The best ones are made of pure natural gum rubber and all come with screw caps. Now, how can the ice bag or the ice cap help? Now, the ice bag or the ice cap prevents or reduces swelling. It relieves pain, checks bleeding, just like your nose bleeding or vaginal bleeding, as I mentioned earlier, and reduces congestion and inflammation. A second value lies in their reflex effects. So they can relieve congestion and inflammation of deeper um, internal organs, such as in the appendicitis and salpingitis. For this purpose, the application must be placed over the reflex area that affects that deeper organ. All right. A third use is to strengthen and slow the activity of the heart when the pulse is rapid and weak. Okay. So, how do you apply this? You fill the ice cap or the ice bag about one half full with finely chopped ice and you press it down to expel the air and then screw the cap on tightly. Remember they come with a cap. So you dry it and then you test it for leaks. Make sure it's not leaking. All right. So you fill the bag with the crushed ice and then you tighten the cap, dry it off, test it for leaking, dry it off, and then you cover it with a flannel or hand towel and apply it to where it is needed. Never apply an ice bag or ice cap directly to the skin. Always place a cloth over the body part first. Remember, as I said, you need to do that because you can cause freezing and friction or abrasion to your skin. Continually watch to see that there is no danger or injuring the skin through the frostbites. You can get frostbites too. When the ice melts, refill it with more ground ice. All right. So you pour out the water and you refill it and apply it again. Now, some special points. So, you need to choose a bag that is light in weight if it is used continually, especially on the abdomen or the chest. You may want to suspend it in a cradle to take off part of the weight because you don't want it to be too heavy on the area. When it is filled, if all the air is not expelled, the ice will melt more rapidly. So this is why you need to ensure that there's no air in it. All right? So that it can stay a little longer, but then you have to keep checking the area because you don't want to get frostbite, the reddening of the skin, or burning of the skin, all right, or freezing of the skin. Now, there is another one that is called proximal that you have heard me mention before, proximal compress. Now, what is proximal compress? A proximal compress is any type of cold compress, be it ice bag, ice caps, cold compress, etc. Now, it is placed over a large artery in order to reduce blood circulation in the part of the body or the limb served by that artery. It is not always convenient to apply a wet cloth to an afflicted part. Now, this is especially true with open wounds, which need to be kept very clean. So, how do you apply it? A cold compress is wrung out of water, yes, 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and then placed over the artery supplying the afflicted part. Now, instead of a cold compress, an ice pack filled with ice or ice water can be used. The compress must be frequently changed in order to maintain the cold effect. Where to apply it? What one needs to know is where to apply the proximal compress. Now, here are some of the most useful places that you can put the compress corresponding areas in which the temperature and blood supply will be reduced. Now, one, you can apply to the knee and the calf of the leg of the affected foot. So if your right foot is affected, you can apply to the knee or the calf of that right leg. All right. So to the femoral artery on the inside of the leg, to the whole thigh, or an ice bag to the back side of the knee. So to affect the portion of the leg below the knee. An ice bag to the groin to affect the whole leg, a cold compress around the elbow joint to affect the hand. So it depends. So if your leg is affected, you can put an ice bag you can apply it to the groin area. And if your hand is affected, you can put a cold compress around the elbow joint. Now to the whole upper arm, and this will affect the forearm. All right. An ice bag to the armpit, and this will affect the whole arm as well. An ice bag to the bend of the elbow, and this will also affect the hand. All right. An ice collar or cold, that's the collar that will be around the neck, or cold wet towel around the neck to affect the brain. This application helps reduce congestion in the brain, reduce laryngeal inflammation, and aids in meningitis. You can also apply over the carotid arteries, which are located on both sides of the neck, and this also affect the brain. When I said affect the brain, it means if you have any congestion on the brain or anything like that. Now, these are where the proximal compress is applied if you are not able to apply it directly to the area. So you won't be able to apply it to your brain, and it is not advised that you apply it to your head. So um, you are going to put it on the neck, both sides of the neck, so that it can work for your brain. Now, we have just looked at local cold. Now we're going to be looking at cold to heating. All right. Now, cold to heating, I'm going to be telling you what it is and and then we go into the applications. So these are applications of cold cloths covered with flannel to a body area. The body reacts and heats up the pack, and the result is improved circulation and a better flow of healing blood in and out of the afflicted area. So, heating throat compress and dry throat compress. Now, these are the two that I'm going to be telling you about what it is and how it can help you and the problems that it can solve, and also what you will need and how to apply it. Okay, so heating throat compress and dry throat compress. Now, this is a cold compress that is so covered up that warming soon takes place. So, it's a cold compress that you cover up. The effect produced is that of a mild, prolonged application of moist heat. Okay, now how can this help you? Gradually, over several hours, a throat compress can reduce inflammation and bring healing to a body part. A cold, wet cloth is placed about the throat, then covered with dry flannel to prevent air circulation, thus increasing the body heat in that area. Mothers will often place a heating compress on a child with a sore throat in the evening and then take it off the next morning. Now, the compress should be dry by then. Okay, so this is another way you can use it with the flannel. You can put the cold, wet cloth and place it on the throat, and then you cover it with a dry flannel. Now, the problems it can solve is the throat compress is very common. It's a very common household remedy for sore throat, hoarseness, tonsillitis, um, pharyngitis, laryngitis, quinsy, and this one I've never heard of before, but it is the eustachian tube inflammation. So you can use it to solve these problems. So the problems are eustachian tube inflammation, quinsy, laryngitis, pharyngitis, tonsillitis, hoarseness, and sore throat. So you can use the heating throat compress and dry throat compress to remedy these situations, these problems. Now, you're going to need 2 or 3 thicknesses of ordinary cotton cloth, about 3 inches wide and long enough to encircle the neck twice. 2 thicknesses of flannel, not less than 4 inches wide. You're going to need some safety pins and possibly a piece of bandage. All right, so you're going to prepare your materials for the neck compress. And if it is to go on one who is too frail to warm up, then use a dry throat compress. So the heating throat compress and the dry throat compress you use accordingly. So this is prepared in the same manner as the regular heating throat compress. That's the dry one, but without being first wrung out of the cold water. So it's dry, so you won't put it in any water. In giving a regular heating throat compress, wring the cotton cloth from cold water and place it around the neck. Now this should be about 2 to 3 thickness about the neck. All right, so you're going to place it around the neck, and it's going to be thick around the neck. For the dry throat compress, now you will not be given using a cloth that is wrung out. You are going to be using something dry. Okay. So you are going to cover it well with the flannel, or a single or double thick, depending on the weight of the material that you have. Now fit the flannel snugly but not too tightly that it will be uncomfortable or you will strangle the patient. All right, and then you're going to pin it securely. Preferably, you wrap it so that you can pin it at the back or to the side of the neck, because if the pin gets loose, you don't want to any damage. All right, so you pin it where, make sure the pin is secure, and you get it fastened around the neck. Now, in tonsillitis, quinsy, and inflammation of the eustachian tube, the compress should extend upward about the lower part of the ear. So you're going to put it over your head, like, right? You're going for tonsillitis, quinsy, and inflammation of the eustachian tube. That is what you're going to do. You may need to hold up this part of the compress, that is by the lower part of the ear, with a bandage that is fastened to it and goes over the top part of the head and then back down to it on the other side. Right? So it's like you're wrapping the head. That is why it is said you're going to need a bandage as well. So you're going to remove it the next morning, and it should be entirely dry, because your body will heat it up. That area will be so heated that it will dry the application. So when first put on, it can be quite wet, but it should not drip. But the next morning it must be dry because of the heating process. As soon as you have removed the compress, rub the neck with a cloth that is wrung out of cold water. You're closing up back the area. All right. So that is it, the application for the heating throat compress and the dry throat compress. Now, for the dry throat compress, you wouldn't need to rub um, to to use a cloth that is wrung out of cold water, because, well, you would, because it would be hot, but it wouldn't be so hot. So the cold doesn't have to be all that cold. All right. Now for the heating joint compress, and also you have the dry joint compress. Now, what is the heating joint compress or the joint dry joint compress? This compress is quite similar to the heating throat compress, yes, this that I just described. The primary difference lies in the fact that this heating compress is applied to one of the joints, maybe the foot, the ankle, the knee, the elbow, or the hand, or even to your wrist. And this is applied to those areas instead of the neck. So that would be the difference. Now, the problems that the heating joint compress and the dry joint compress solve is, it is most frequently used in cases of rheumatism and rheumatic fever. But there are other painful joint conditions that it also helps to alleviate. All right. So as you hear the name heating joint compress, it means that if your joint is afflicted, now you use this type of compress. How do you apply it? You will need similar materials to those that I used for the throat heating compress. Is similar materials, and if the person you are applying this to, this person needs to be placed upon, if sorry, if the person you're applying this to is too weak or frail to heat up a wet compress, then you may need to use the dry one. All right, so you can use the dry one. You are going to use several layers of flannel with or without dry cotton beneath it in this case. Now you may wish to place a solution such as oil or wintergreen or camphorated oil, menthol, mustard, water, etc. on the area, on the cotton before it is wrapped around the joint. Now this helps to relieve pain and by its counter irritant action, it enhances the heating effect by increasing the blood circulation at the painful joint. So it will alleviate the pain. All right, so you're going to wring out the cloth in cold water. You're going to wring the cloth and then you are going to apply it to the joint or the afflicted joint. And then you're going to wrap with the flannel and pin it together. Two thicknesses of cotton cloth are wrapped around the afflicted joints. Sometimes you can also use gauze, but cotton will enable you to bring the material closer to the skin because the cotton is softer. Now, this is then held in place either with a 3-inch roller bandage or you can use a broad flannel cloth. All right, and you pin that and you apply it to the area and let it stay. Now, the other application, cold to heating, is the moist abdominal bandage, partial abdominal bandage, or the protected joint bandage, or wet girdle. Now, these are the names that are used for this application. Now, what is this? Now, this is a heating compress applied over the stomach and intestinal area. It is an application of cold, wet sheeting covered up with dry flannel, which the body then warms up into a very helpful heating pack. So your body is going to be used to warm this up. You see how our bodies, we are fearfully and wonderfully made, you know. Our body temperature adjusts according to the situation. So because you are going to use this now, you are going to apply this to the stomach or the intestinal area. All right, so the moist abdominal bandage is also called a binder, a girdle, or a pack, hence the name. So when only the front part is moist, it is called a partial abdominal bandage. Okay, so how can it help us? Now, the moist abdominal bandage or the binder is one of the most useful of the heating compresses. It is recommended in nearly all forms of atonic indigestion, neurath- neurath- neurathenia, anemia, or the liver, insomnia, um, catarrh, jaundice, constipation, and similar conditions of this sort. Now, for these purposes, it is generally worn only at night. So, with a hot water bottle placed over the stomach, it is also useful in milder cases of nausea and vomiting. If plastic is placed over the flannel to prevent the cotton from drying out, it is called a protected binder. So it depends on what you apply. That's the name that is given to it. And it is used for hyperacidity and also to obtain relaxation in the abdominal organs. A protected binder, by keeping the cotton from drying out, will induce a stronger perspiration than would otherwise occur. Now, you would need one thickness of cotton sheeting lining or 3 to 4 thicknesses of gauze It should be 8 to 9 inches wide. No matter what the material is made of, and a little longer than 1.5 times around the body. Over this will go on outer flannel covering that is about 12 inches wide, about the same length as the lining or slightly longer. You're going to also need safety pins and possibly plastic that will also be needed. All right. So, how are you going to apply this? Prepare the sheeting for a moist abdominal bandage by dipping it into cold water. Now, if the one receiving the treatment is too frail to warm up the large wet surface of the cotton wrapping, you're going to give him a partial bandage. Only wet that portion of the cloth that is over the front or the over the abdomen, or only place a smaller wet cloth over the abdomen and let the rest of the encircling covering be flannel alone. That is, if the person receiving the treatment is too weak or too frail to warm up the, the larger wet surface. So if they are able, they'll be able to warm up the smaller wet surface. All right, so these two variations of the partial abdominal bandage are milder forms of the moist abdominal bandage. So you're going to lay out the flannel material and you're going to wring out the water from the cotton cloth. Now the dry flannel is placed across a table. The linen or the gauze, wrung nearly dry from cold water, is placed over it. The one not feeling well now lies back on the bandage. The lower edge of the cloth and flannel should touch below the hip bones, that is below the iliac crests. All right, so lay wet cloth on the table on top of the flannel material. Then you're going to wrap the wet cloth around the body. Pull each end of the wet cloth tightly over the person's abdomen and tuck them under the opposite side. Cover quickly and snugly with both ends of the flannel and securely fasten the ends with safety pins. Also, pin darts at each side to make the binder fit better. The flannel pieces should project about 1.5 to 2 inches beyond the wet gauze or the linen. Right, so it should cover that area. So if plastic is now placed over the flannel to keep it from drying out, or for hyperacidity, it now becomes a protected bandage. But understand this, that this is not the usual way of preparing a moist abdominal bandage, because it's only because the person is too weak. A hot water bottle is sometimes placed inside the flannel over the stomach area as well. Now, when you later remove the binder, wash the area with cold water and dry it thoroughly. All right. Now, for the wet girdle, as we mentioned earlier, so the moist abdominal bandage is a heating compress. This is a heating compress over the front of the abdominal area. All right. And this is frequently used, you know, by doctors in time past. All right, so this is a wraparound moist abdominal bandage. It covers the front, sides, and back of the lower trunk. The region to which it is applied is bounded by the nipple line above and the hip joints below. In nearly every instances in which the hot abdominal pack is given, um, The wet girdle is the application that is always referred to. All right, so the heating chest pack is the other one, and we don't have time to go through this one, so I'm going to be continuing on with this one next week, or the next time I am here. I'm going to be continuing with it. And just to let you know that I won't be here next week, but my producer will be here next week. So when I return, I will carry on with the hydrotherapy and the cold to heating methods. And we will, go through them and look at them, and we'll go through some other um, methods. For example, we just looked at local cold and cold to heating. So we'll be finishing up that, and we'll be going to larger cold to heating, and then we'll be going to um, local hot and cold. Because listeners, viewers, this is very important for us to know, because as I said, when we are going to apply the hot water or cold water remedies, or we are going to do these therapies, hydrotherapy, it is important for us to know what to apply when and how they work, what they do, and to get the desired results. So this is why we are spending the time to go through this material with you. I trust that the information has been useful. I certainly enjoyed being here with you this afternoon and sharing this information. I find it very fascinating and very interesting because, sometimes we get some injuries and we don't know what to do. And instead of spending money unnecessarily, we can apply these remedies. And by the grace of God, having faith in God, trusting in God, they will work for us. I hope that you'll have a wonderful and productive week and healthy week. Let us pray. Our Father, which art in heaven, thank you for your grace and your mercy. Thank you, Lord, for this information that you have given to us. And I pray, dear Lord, that we will use it in faith, knowing that you are the great physician and that you are the one that heals us. Bless us now and grant us your peace. Please keep us healthy, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. It's goodbye from Nature's Way until next Sunday. God has healed thee. I am the Lord, your healer.